So I'm finally tired of writing about my solar rig, my solar incubator. I've written like, I don't know, a million times about this stuff. So I'm just going to make a video so I can just post it. And anytime anybody wants to know this stuff, I'll link them to this video and they can figure it out. Now this is about solar, but it's really not about solar. It's about batteries. So we're going to start with batteries, and because that's really all it's all about. It's about a DC system and using DC current and charging DC current. Hang on, I got to open my battery box. Which, yeah, it's in the house, but I live here in the sense that I rarely leave, so it doesn't bother me to have these batteries in here with me, because, you know, like I say, they're my friends. I live with them. I know what's going on in that box before I open it. Anyhow, I'll get the lid off. So these are my batteries. These are 4 6-volt L16 type batteries. L16 is just a size. These are typically used in floor scrubbers. I'd like to have 8 of them, but I have 4 because that's what I could get a deal on when I went hunting for blem batteries. If you're doing a solar rig, contact a battery distributor and see what kind of blems they have available. They call them blems. They're seconds, but they'll test out good and you'll get a lot of bang for your buck. These are typically, let's say $250 a piece, maybe even more. I got all 4 of these. They're just sitting on the shelf too long, but they brought back a good charge. And I got them for $240 out the door. They peel all the stickers off and you get what you get. But if you study batteries a little bit and know how to read specific gravity and all that, it's just fine. You can make sure that you're getting what you're getting. These small wires are just to my charge controller. This one gives me very good voltage readings, and this one is a temperature sensor because my charge controller adjusts for temperature. All batteries have a spec sheet, and whatever battery you get, and you're not going to have a lot of options because they must be deep cycle batteries. You know, there's not a lot of leeway in that. If you use cheap batteries, you're going to be disappointed. You got to use these big heavy batteries, golf cart type, floor scrubber type, or something made specifically for renewable energy. Whatever battery you get, the manufacturer made a spec sheet, and you pull that up and find what your charging profile is. And it will tell you just how to treat your batteries, which is the most important thing that matters in this system. Don't think about solar, think about batteries. That's all it's about. Now, these are wet lead acid batteries, so I have to check my water. I do that about once a month just because I like to take good care of these guys. You got to keep your plates covered or you're going to have problems. You're going to have a bad time. Other than these little wires that my charge controller needs to go directly to the batteries, there's nothing else in this battery box. It all goes up to a pair of bus bars, and that is my battery terminals. I'm going to close this battery box back up and we'll move on. To quickly talk about this battery box and how I can get away with having these hydrogen belching batteries in my house. This lid has a good seal on it. I have a nice 2-inch vent on the top that is higher than anything in that box so that the hydrogen does go out, and there's a vent down low so that I get circulation. I do that in the interest of my battery health because batteries need to stay right around room temperature, about 70 degrees, and mine do that by being in here with me. I know it's kind of flaky and dangerous, but it's a risk I'm willing to take because, like I say, I live with them. I'm on this system like stink. Anyhow, these are my battery terminals. These are some bus bars that I made out of copper bar. If you ever price them, you'll see why I made them, because they're expensive. And yeah, I'm using this $5 switch from the auto parts store that's not UL listed, but I'm my insurance company, so I'm good with that. I can shut off my entire system right here because this 2-aught welding cable comes up to this switch and goes to my positive bus bar. The negative side, I have what's called a shunt in there. And what that is for the meter that is basically the gas gauge to my batteries. If you're going to run a battery system, you pretty much must have this meter. It's made by Bogart Engineering. It's called a Trimetric TM2025. And what it does, this is the 12.7 volts is the it's monitoring the battery that I have for starting my generator. That's just a nice little convenience. This is the voltage of the batteries that we just looked at. We are charging right now, it's daytime, and so that's my house batteries at 25.8 volts. Voltage doesn't tell you much, really. Now this here tells me that I'm running in the hole at the moment. The negative sign lit up, and I'm running, let's say, 60 watts negative. I'm using 60 watts more than my batteries are charging from the solar panels right now. That's probably because my refrigerator kicked on. But this is the real beauty right here. That tells me that my batteries have 80% of their capacity left. Before I got this meter, I was going crazy trying to guess what my capacity was based on voltage, and you just can't really tell. It's not a reliable way to know. Anyway, I've got a battery and battery box and basically a fuel gauge to tell me all about it. I know what's going on with my batteries. Back to the bus bars. If we think about a system like this being, first of all, really just about your batteries and the sizing of it in amp hours, determining how long you're going to get to run whatever it is you're going to get to run from those batteries, it brings us to use. Now, for me, I don't like to pay wads of money for 24 volt light bulbs. So I'm running a 24 volt to 12 volt converter. What it does is reduces the 24 volts directly from my bank down to 12 volts, which I run into a fuse block, and then I run off to various 12 volt circuits through that hole in the wall to run inexpensive lighting in other parts of the house. So you can run DC circuits directly off your batteries. To run 110, you need what's known as an inverter. And you need a quality one. And you see, it is the thing that is on the big wires all the way to the batteries. It's also on a 70 amp fuse, a breaker. It's got its own cutoff switch. And this is not some piece of crap from the auto parts store. A good inverter, mine isn't really all that good, but it's still about 800 bucks and it suits my purposes. And I'm using it inappropriately. It's set up to basically just plug things into, and it has a GFI outlet on it. It operates at 24 volts, like my battery bank. So I have appropriate voltage going in, and then I've got two 110 circuits that come out that also go to the hole in the other side of the wall. Here in a minute, I'll take you to the hole on the other side of the wall and show you what's going on. Anything that needs to be run on 110 runs from this inverter, from the batteries. And it's really that simple. Any typical household thing that you want to run on 110 comes from the inverter. The DC thing, you see, that's just a fuse block from a boat is all that is. And that way I don't have to run lights through my inverter, things like that. As far as 12 volt lighting, what I like is these 12 volt CFLs. Yeah, this is a 12 volt DC CFL, and these things are awesome. I don't run any car lights or any BS like that. This is a typical CFL bulb, and it runs on 12 volt DC, and it puts out light just almost every bit as good as a 110 CFL. These are about $6 a piece, and they last a good long time. I have burned a couple of them up in the last year, but you know, That's the way it goes. I'm glad to have them. So, we've got batteries that we know what's going on with them. And we have a use side, AC and DC. That's the easy part. We're all good at burning up electricity. So, as far as charging, we're still not even thinking about solar yet. Let's look at this battery charger. Now, according to my spec sheet, I need to bring in appropriate charging voltage at the proper amperage, which is about 29 volts at 36 to 40 amps. Well, since I basically have a battery bank here, just like would come out of a floor scrubber, I've got a floor scrubber battery charger. So it's like it's made for it because it is. The smart chargers, I ran those first and I burned them up. They don't work. Look at the size of this thing. It weighs 50 pounds and there's a great big transformer in there. And when I plug this in, it kicks out some amperage and my batteries come up quick. And it is the proper charger for the batteries. Everything's got a, when you hear people talk about sizing, that's what they're talking about. Your components have to be matched. They've got to be appropriate to each other. So when I need to, I just charge in this or plug in this charger, which is wired right into my bus bars. But I've got it unplugged. I just plug it in when I need it. This is a grid outlet. I am currently not off grid, but I'm working on it. The only thing I can't run with this system is my chest freezer, which is big. This outlet has a cord on the back side of it, and I can either plug it into my generator or into a grid outlet. Right now it's plugged into the grid, and I've got my air conditioner plugged into it because it's hot. But when I need to, I just plug in this battery charger, and we come up. And this kind of brings us to the solar aspect. This is a solar charge controller. It is basically this, except instead of plugging it into the wall, it plugs into solar panels. And that's how it works. This thing is just a battery charger. That's all it is. It's a really good one. Now this is an MPPT. This is a Tristar MPPT 45 amp. And I'm running 1080 watts of solar panels that are pretty high voltage. They bring down about 80 volts. And so this thing here converts that to proper charging voltage in amps. And it's good at it. I like Morningstar because they have a, well, they're a good company for one, and good product. This thing's about $500, so it's not cheap. You're paying for what you get from these guys. But they have an array calculator, a solar panel array calculator on their website where you can go and type in or select the brand of your solar panels, which will put all the specs to it, and then select one of their products, and it'll show you how to wire your array. So it's not confusing at all. I've got this one maxed out with the panels that I have because they are high voltage. You know, 80 volts is pretty high when you're charging 24. And proper fusing, you know, you got to have it. Now, this is an A&L fuse block that comes, you know, from the between the charge controller and the batteries. And I'm using A&L because it's the good stuff. They're a little expensive, but let me show you real quick what can happen if you use AGU. I ran it, I saved a few bucks. Look at that thing, it got hot. Because AGU fuses just stick between these springs, while A&L, you're screwing that thing down. You got nice tight connections. Anyhow, I think I've covered this as far as it's just about batteries and charging them after you use them. And you need appropriate size charging. I have this charger in place, I guess I should say, because sometimes the sun don't shine. So I can fire up my generator, plug in my charger, life is good. Now I'm going to take you for a walk on the other side of the hole in the wall. I guess before we go outside, I should cover briefly that I also have the Tristar Meter that I accidentally mounted sideways on my little control panel here. This thing is handy because it tells me what's going on with my solar panels. They tell me about my charging side through that particular controller, which is good. It tells me how many watts I'm pulling down, how many amps, how many kilowatt hours for the day, and right now I'm producing about 3.5, which is pretty good for a system as small as mine. I think I've done good on efficiency. And then this is just a remote start panel for my generator, because I don't like to go outside if I don't have to. So anyhow, if you have to choose between these 2 meters, you want this one. If you're ever setting up a system, this thing, I think it's going to cost you nearly 200 bucks. But man, I tell you, I ran for a year without it, and watching these little lights on the charge controller, they were always turning red and stuff, and I was, oh no, they're turning red, and plugging in my smart charger, and smart chargers burn up. They're rated at high amperage, but if you look at the size of a smart charger compared to the size of an actual charger, you'll understand right away. Anyhow, let's go outside to the other side of the hole. So here's the very attractive hole. You can see the 2 110 wires, Romex. And I know it's probably not code because it's Romex and it's going through the wall and blah blah blah. I've got all this under a little roof, so it's good enough for me. I'm not working for Underwriters Laboratories. The rest of this is just, you know, the various crap that had to come out of the house. My 110, my 2 little 110 circuits, I've just brought them out here, tied them into a breaker box. It basically just, it's a junction box right now. It's not a breaker box. I've just busted it up into various circuits so I can run them where I want to. I've got the 2 110 circuits coming in, so I've got 2 110 legs, and I just break off of that. Not that I run a lot of 110. I run a chest freezer converted refrigerator, a ceiling fan, and one day I'm going to have this thing in condition to actually run my chest freezer too. So as far as the solar panels, there's 2 wires that go to the charge controller, and they come out to this big breaker box or switch so that I can shut off input to, from the panels to my house if I need to. And they just go up and over to the solar array. This 3rd wire you see is just to a 45 watt panel, which I use when I need to charge these little sealed lead acid batteries that I use for my generator. Generator's good for running that big charger. This is a 3500 watt Kohler. It's a little one, you know, but I mean it weighs like 400 pounds because it's an old Kohler. It's the good stuff. It's extended run, nice big oil pan reservoir. And let's see, the way I run the exhaust on this, see I've got a union there. And I run it right up to a motorcycle exhaust with a rain cap on it, motorcycle muffler. We are working our way off grid, and I haven't done it yet, but I need to build a junction box on this wall to run power down to the utility room down there, so I can run the washer and dryer off of the generator, which runs on our propane system. I've got a solenoid lock off going to a Garrettson, oh what is that, it's a Model KN on-demand regulator, and you can watch my other video to see how that works. But the generator can be started from in the house or outside of the house, and as soon as the ignition comes on, it also switches on the solenoid lock off for the gas. I can do that from my living room, and that is no joke. The propane system is important, and because that's where our hot water comes from. We run our house on barbecue bottle because we're that good. I'll have to cover that in a later video. Anyway, my DC circuits, they go into a hole in the wall. I like extension cord for those because hell, they're a natural. My 110 from the inverter just goes into this breaker box that's behaving as a junction box, so I can split those 2 circuits into several circuits. I also have a tiny charge controller for the 45 watt panel that charges my starting batteries. And I think that's everything there is to know about this out here. It's all very straightforward stuff. batteries, DC circuit, AC circuit, and then a charge circuit on the other side of the batteries. Let's go up the ladder and have a peek. So, what I have here is 3 strings of 2 panels. These are 180 watt panels, I believe, giving me a total of 1,080 watts, which actually by the time it gets through this short distance and down to that charge controller, on a good day I'm getting 600 watts. The losses are huge even with good proper wiring. So a string just means that these 2 panels are connected together. Those 2 panels, the next 2 are all connected together. So I have 3 strings, and they come down here to what's called a combiner box. And that's where all those are connected together to go into the 1 wires that go down to the charge controller. And, oh hey, there's my little 45 watt deal that's just handy for charging the starter batteries, if they should need it. Let's see. I think that's really it. I mean, as far as electricity, which you're not going to get very much out of in an off-grid environment, which is why you need backup fuels like propane and things like that. But I don't know. Seems like a good way to me. Anyhow, I guess I'll amend this if I realize I overlooked anything. It's a lot